Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games Podcast. This is episode number 97 for the 11th of June in this year of our gaming 2019. My name is Agasically Stamus. I will be your host for tonight. Here with me, as almost always, I have my three dedicated co-hosts, Swiss Guard.
How you doing?
DBQ.
If I can find the right man, I am missing a tooth, gentlemen. I'm so excited about E3 that I am here even after getting a tooth pulled. That not even oral surgery pain can hold me back from the excitement of E3. So, if I sound like a little third grader, all excited about Christmas Day, it's because it's E3.
And Osiris Prime.
I don't even know what to say now. Hello.
So welcome to our coverage of E3 2019. This is part one. We will be airing part two Thursday night, approximately 8:30 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't attended one of our discussions before, let me tell you, this is an intellectual, insightful, informative podcast. No sensationalism, no ragification. This is not the place for forehead slaps or fail whales. This is a show for serious gamers, students of the industry, and patrons of the art of video games. And this, as I said, is our E3 coverage for 2019, part one.
Man, now I feel stupid for making the dumb joke about my tooth. You set us up as this high class establishment.
Now, a little bit of funny is A-OK. Tonight, we will be running down the numbers covering Google Stadia, Bungie's Destiny 2 announcements, EA Play, Xbox, which includes both their E3 presentation and the additional information that they dropped at their Inside Xbox episode, which took place Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific. Devolver Digital, I believe, will have a tidbit on those, and the PC Gaming Show. Now, in years past, for those who have been long-time subscribers to the channel, we have done a rigorous, thorough, exhaustive, line-by-line rundown of every single thing which was discussed in sequential and chronological order for every press conference. We're not doing that this year. What we discovered was that a lot of stuff was discussed and presented at press conferences that never came to be. And a lot of the stuff just didn't really move the industry. And that's what our podcast is really about, is about things that move the industry and evolve the art. It's the ethos behind our typical deep dive format and pretty much everything that we do. So let's go ahead and get started. Gentlemen, as almost always, I have a few surprises for you. So I want to actually start off the podcast by talking about some higher level things, kind of in summary of the top level view of E3. I'm going to go ahead and go first. And while I'm talking, I want you guys to think about what was a trend that you feel that you've noticed across all of the conferences this year at E3. Things that I picked out were, number one, there were more women, and specifically women of color, presenters this year at E3 than I've ever noticed before. I forget the young lady's name. I'll get to it when we get to the Xbox coverage, but there was an African-American woman who came out and did some of the announcements during the Xbox conference. There was another female executive who came out and presented part of the Ubisoft announcements. Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, came out and did their pretty much entire presentation. I thought that was a positive trend in the industry. Also, in terms of design, a heavy emphasis on three-player co-op games this year. I'm not really sure what the impetus is behind that. Of course, it would be easy to say that that is driven by the uptake of Apex Legends. But of course, a lot of these games must have been in development for several years beforehand. And I'm wondering if there's some type of mathematical or potentially software-based reason why or maybe even a social reason why 3 players is more optimal than 4. One thing may be just that it's numerically just easier to get together a group of 3. It seems like when things are 4-player based, you're always in the hunt for that 4th player who you're not able to lock down. I definitely want to get your guys' input over the course of this discussion about what is up with the weird stacking of new releases all piling up in March of 2020. We had that this year, February 2019, we expected to be a bumper crop of releases. Many of those releases never came to be. They were either canceled or moved. or came to some other unknown fate. And of course, the big theme for this year was also services. We had announcements from Xbox about Game Pass Ultimate and PC Game Pass. Ubisoft announced Uplay Plus, and of course, there was the big announcement of Stadia. The last thing I want to do before I go around the horn on your guys' trend impressions, we've talked about this before, but just to level set, I also want to re-ratchet the notion of the big five. This is a term that we tend to throw around in our podcast. I'm probably guilty of it, where we reference the five largest third-party publishers in the games industry. I felt compelled to pull the thread on this from a data standpoint, and I want to kind of re-ratchet how I'm going to use that term at least. So I looked at the biggest game publishers by revenue, but then the other thing I did to modulate that list is not all of those publishers by revenue necessarily are artistically involved in the industry in terms of the types of games that get presented and are new and innovative. For one instance, as of December 2018, the biggest publisher by revenue is Tencent, and I just don't have a strong feeling of Tencent's involvement in the games industry from an artistic and a design standpoint. So this is predominantly driven by revenue figures at the end of last year, but then I also specifically looked at who puts out what types of games. And I didn't include any of the console manufacturers here. And like Tencent, I didn't include anyone that in my mind is kind of like just a games factory, where they own lower level publishers who really focus on putting the games out. So at the top of the list, and I call it Big Five, I've stuffed there are a couple in here that make it a list of 7, but at the end of the day, it's going to be Big Five because I'll tell you which ones I kind of throw out. Number 1 is Activision Blizzard, who was not at E3 at all. Number 2 is Electronic Arts. Number 3, and this is one that I kind of sort of throw out, maybe tangentially, Bandai Namco is actually a larger game publisher than Take-Two Interactive, which comes in at number 4, Ubisoft, which comes in at number 5. The other, number 6, and this is another one that I kind of throw out, is Warner Brothers, because they do so many licensed properties, even though some of those licensed properties hold a lot of influence on the industry. Number 7, which in my titrated list is actually now number 5, is Square Enix. So with that all being said, Swiss, any notable trend? And included in that, you can also just throw out, the one announcement that made you happiest, saddest, most disappointed, most notably missing, anything that just stood out to you in terms of E3.
For me, the biggest thing that I noticed were trailer reels without strong AAA announcements. So it just felt like there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone from a lot of these presentations. I think I watched all of them that we're going to talk about tonight. I didn't get all the way through the Destiny one, but it just felt like a lot of an excuse to release all the trailers at once. And I think one of my notes in the Xbox conference was games-wise, this feels very much like the end of a console generation. I feel like the biggest games, such as Cyberpunk, were not first party. And I want to say that they even might have said something like that, like preface that in the Xbox conference about it being kind of a time to wind down, and they're not going to, announce their big gun games. I know we're going to see something from Halo, but their main titles, knowing that we have a new console generation a couple of years out.
Okay, DBQ.
Oh, I think the trailers without a lot of gameplay was definitely one of the things I noticed. I think also, it made Watch Dogs stand out a little bit because of the fact that there was actually gameplay there. I think it does feel like an end of a console generation as people are kind of clearing their slates. I think that's also why, as you referenced before, why we're seeing a big stack up in March at the end of the fiscal year, as they're trying to kind of reap the last little bit of revenue out of these consoles before they give a good big push into the next generation.
Real quick, I have a thought on that. Do you think that spring 2020 is close enough to feel rather imminent, but far enough away that if they, delay the game, there won't be immediate riots? I don't know. I might be a little bit cynical about that
Well,
timing.
Well, I think it's an interesting play, and we'll definitely get more into this as we have this discussion. When we get around to talk about Xbox and what they're doing from an architectural perspective, I don't know that Microsoft is presented any risk by putting out a game in April, right, or on through the year. Everything that's coming to Xbox One, and we're going to talk about some of the specific verbiage that was used in the conference, but maybe more importantly, in the Inside Xbox, everything is going to be playable on Scarlet. So when I looked at that, I feel like March I feel like March you start getting into that area where people go, Scarlet's coming out in probably November. I'm not going to bother buying that game on my Xbox One. I'll just wait. But I don't think that presents any risk to Microsoft because you'll be able to play that game on Scarlet. I don't know, DB, any other thoughts?
No, I think that's a really good point. I think that's an important piece, potentially, of their marketing, is that they can keep kind of running it all the way up, and suddenly their launch lineup is much larger because they've got everything that will play. And then, granted, Sony's been out there saying the same thing in terms of backwards compatibility. So I think it does. For me, it feels more financial than it does, kind of creating a potential for a delay or boxing that in. But I think you're right. And if we do see delays, I could see where they start messaging it that way as it plays best on, right. And we've seen plenty of that messaging this generation as well. I also want to just say, I agree with you in terms of the diversity. That was, I think, and I wonder, right? I'm glad that we had as many women developers out on stage as we did. I think I don't want to be cynical about that, but I think in the light of things like Riot Games and other places where there's been some, and there is, right? There's a culture of harassment within the industry, and so being able to be out there and highlight those strong developers across all demographics, I think is a good thing in terms of the industry.
Yeah, and we have this conversation like in comics and other things, and people to take what you mentioned, right? That slice of cynicism of is this contrived to feel like it shouldn't happen? And my stance has long been, and my response to those people is, it's going to have to be contrived for a while, and then eventually it will become actual impactful cultural social change. And so the contrived.
I think that's right. Like, and just because it may be the original motives behind it may have some of that to it, the fact that when anybody gets up on stage, it's genuine, it is powerful, it's significant. And so I think that no matter how they got there, what they are able to do on that stage makes it significant.
Yeah, and one of the women that I forgot to mention, and again, women of color, was I forget her name perfectly. I think it's Inakumi, the creative director of Ghost. I've got it written down. Of course, it was part of the Ubisoft.
Ghostwire?
Ghostwire, yes, which is one of the games I'm very excited about. She was handpicked by I think Miyakami, I think is the director's name, or I may not have that right either.
Yeah, she's been doing a lot within the evil, unknown.
Yeah, the evil within or whatever. Yep. Yeah, so her position is genuine. She was handpicked while she was working for him on that game and has been being groomed and mentored by him for some time. So Prime, what's your input on general trends or anything that stood out to you or anything that you were super happy about or super disappointed about?
Just to piggyback on your guys, just pretty much the same thing you guys are saying. A lot of the games that I was excited about and looking forward to, all of pretty much next year. Obviously, you got the Scarlet, which is next year. So, just everything that I was excited about seemed to be next year. It's like through most of the presentations, it's just kind of like, oh, hey, there's this and this, and it's 2020. It's like, oh, okay. So, it's just the same thing you guys are saying. It's the end of that, the console generation. So, they're kind of winding down, but obviously they want to get those they want to kind of go out big, So they just don't have. It doesn't seem like there's a lot for this year that's like super exciting. I mean, yeah, I'm excited for Ghost Recon and Watch Dogs 3, which I believe are this year, or at least one of those is.
Yeah. Ghost Recon is. I have to look at the date for Watch Dogs. I think Watch Dogs is spring of next year.
Yeah,
I think it's April 16th, actually.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just, I don't know. It just didn't seem like there was too much to get excited about this year. And some of my favorite games that I wanted to play were delayed until next year, which we'll talk about Thursday. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, one thing I am definitely excited about is I am excited about Stadia. And I feel like part of our obligation on this podcast is to roll back some of the FUD that is out there on the internet that is highly speculative and a lot of fear mongering about what that service is, what it can do, and where it fits within people's gaming schema as far as use cases go. Again, part of my counter theme or countercultural pushback in the intro that I gave and wrote into our podcast post is, head slaps, forehead slaps, and fail whales. There's a lot of that, has been a lot of that going around the internet and on YouTube. Tons of YouTubers doing 2-minute, reaction videos to the Stadia announcements, claiming that it's a failure and that it's ineffective and there's no point in it. I strongly disagree. Let's go ahead and run down the tail of the tape. So first of all, the Stadia Connect was last Thursday. And Phil Harrison, who a former Sony Interactive Entertainment executive and now a employee of Google, indicated right off the bat that this was the first in a continuing series. So as the industry is going, everybody is trying to do a Nintendo Direct, and it's kind of converting to that format for a lot of their press presentations. First game that we saw presented was Baldur's Gate 3, which was a good, strong opening. Some of the tech specs, and I know you guys have your names by some of these topics. I'm going to run down the tail of the tape and then swing back and have the discussions. Tech specs, most people were curious about bandwidth and what the performance profile was for the streaming service. 35 megabits per second. If you think about what service level you are subscribed to from your ISP, will get you 4K 60 frames per second and 5.1 surround sound. I will say supposedly. We'll come back and talk a little bit about the technology of the internet and how some of these relationships are not entirely linear. 20 megabits per second for 1080p 60 frames per second. And I believe those are the midpoints. I think the 35 megabits per second is the midpoint. I think the 20 megabit per second, the 35 megabits per second, I think is the minimum. The 20 megabit per second, I think is the midpoint. I think the bare minimum is a little bit lower than that, but I would definitely want to make sure that I had at least that amount of bandwidth on my ISP subscription to support those resolutions and sound profiles. As far as pricing goes, the Stadia Pro subscription will be $9.99 per month. That gets you free content, so you're going to periodically get some number of games that are delivered. There has been no solid definition of what those are. Most of our speculation and supposition is that will look something like Xbox Live / PlayStation Plus, and you can expect maybe 1 or 2 games per month. Those will not always necessarily be AAA titles, but you'll get a healthy mix of AA and indie titles in there probably. You will get discounts on titles you buy with that Stadia Pro account, just like you do with PlayStation Plus, just like you do with Xbox Game Pass. The first free title you get if you sign up for the Founders Edition is you will get Destiny 2, inclusive of all of its content, the Shadowkeep expansion that drops this fall. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about Bungie. And as far as I understand, that includes the base game, all previous add-ons, and the upcoming Shadowkeep expansion, and the annual pass. So you'll get all the DLC up to that point, plus whatever is going to be delivered over the following year. Hold on to your butts, because I want to run down this list. There are 31 titles included that are available via Stadia at launch. Those include Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, Doom Eternal, Wolfenstein Youngblood, Destiny 2, Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, Baldur's Gate 3, Metro Exodus Thumper Grid, the racing game. This is actually the racing game reboot because they've had Grid and Grid 2 and Grid Autosport or something like that was the third title. The fourth title, they just reset back to the original name. Samurai Showdown, Football Manager 2020, Get Packed, which is a new indie title. The Elder Scrolls Online, The Crew 2, The Division 2, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Trials Rising, NBA 2K, Borderlands 3, Farming Simulator 19, Mortal Kombat 11, Rage 2, Final Fantasy 15, Guilt, another new indie title that is kind of a horror title. The Tomb Raider trilogy, Darksiders Genesis, which is the new Darksiders franchise release, and Just Dance 2020. Now let's go back and talk through each of these items as you guys desire. Swiss, you had something that you wanted to talk about in terms of Baldur's Gate 3?
Just that when it leaked early on, or like a few days before the conference, that we're probably going to be seeing a Baldur's Gate 3 sometime at E3. I kind of got pretty excited. I don't think I played the original Baldur's Gate back in the day, but I do have fond memories of the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance franchise. I played a lot of that with my brother on the PS2. So, okay, cool. We're getting a new...
So just so I can be sure, so Dark Alliance was not the RPG, right? Wasn't that
no,
more
it was like,
action-y?
Yeah, I think it was more like Gauntlet Legends-ish. But still, like, you know, the whole D&D fantasy thing, like I was kind of excited about it. So one, it's interesting that they premiered it at the Stadia press conference. But two, actually, and I kind of am a little embarrassed to say this, but that trailer like grossed me out. Like I was starting to watch it and I was like getting nauseous, and like I actually am not as excited to play the game anymore if they're just gonna go like full on like Peter Jackson gore horror type franchise thing. But that was my note I made on
Well, so
that.
Baldur's Gate is isometric, right? I mean, these are the Divinity and Divinity 2 developers. This is it's coming from that Black Isle kind of lineage. So there may be gore there. You know, whether or not there's a whole lot of cutscenes, it's not necessarily a cutscene heavy genre. So I think the gore may feel a little more detached once it's in an isometric kind of withdrawn perspective. So yes, I wish in that trailer, I wish there was actually some gameplay rather than just kind of a concept trailer. And I get there is lore behind that in terms of who the creature is and things like that. So, but at the same time, it also means that this game is probably not anywhere close to be playable. Like if this is one of their gets, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. At the PC show, they had Baldur's Gate 3 devs as well, and they asked them when it would be out, and he said when it's ready. So,
but it's supposed to be ready at launch. It's supposed to be a title that is available with the launch of Stadia, which is supposed to be November.
So it said. So this is where I think it is not a November game. I think it comes with the launch of Stadia. So this is the Stadia Pro versus, the Founders Edition, that they're using language that the general population of Stadia doesn't exist until 2020.
That's possible. I would consider that a major PR gaffe to not be hyper specific about that. But while you mentioned that, I didn't talk about that. So the initial rollout of Stadia is this fall. They didn't actually mention, as far as I remember, a month or a date during the press conference. I found out it was November when I went and pre-ordered the Founders Edition, and it said shipping in November. That is the initial rollout across 14 countries for those who buy the Founders Edition, which is $129. Gets you a Founders Edition controller, which is Midnight Blue. You can also order a secondary controller for $69.99, which comes in white, wasabi, and I forget what the third color is. I ordered the white one. You get a buddy pass so that you can gift that to a friend. You also get 3 months of the subscription service free. The buddy pass is also for 3 months. You also get Destiny 2. So that is for people who get the Founders Edition. Now, when you will just be able to go and just sign up for Stadia Pro without buying into the Founders Edition, that is not certain right now. And then, of course, there was another subscription tier called Stadia Base, which is free, doesn't require a recurring monthly payment. That gets you access to the streaming service, the games that are in the library, if you buy them. So the differentiation between Pro and Base is, for Pro, you get this. Well, you get the subscription service and you get the 4K resolution up to, and you get the free games that are allocated per month and the discounts. If you're just on Base, you can access the service. You will have to pay for whatever games are available in the library. You don't get them at a discount, and you don't get whatever the probably monthly allocation of free games is. So yes, DBQ, I will admit there's a sliver of uncertainty there with Baldur's Gate 3. I would say if that game is not available when the people get their Founders Edition, that's going to be a significant issue. And then my only other thing about Baldur's Gate 3, we don't know. I don't believe that across any of the press conferences any actual gameplay was shown. So we assume it's isometric because Baldur's Gate 2 was, but we don't really know. One of my big questions is one of my big questions is this a Baldur's Gate / Icewind Dale game, or is this a Neverwinter game where in Baldur's Gate you could have a party of 6 characters with different skills and classes and whatever, but Neverwinter, that was just your one character, and then you could hire other members of your party. But those other members of your party were like pre-rolled. You couldn't create characters of your own. Anything else on Baldur's Gate 3 that we want to talk about? One thing I wanted to add then is just to be wary of this network bandwidth specification. So they talked about bandwidth. Network communications are not solely dependent on bandwidth. Your 3 principal characteristics, which can impact the number of packets that you're receiving, are bandwidth, but also jitter and packet loss, which are 2 different parameters. So basically, you can think about that as the stability of your signal and how much it varies, and then how many packets you drop. Those things will also impact whether or not you're going to wind up getting 4K 60. Google didn't really get into that. I get it. Not everybody's a network nerd and doesn't necessarily need to know that. You don't have any control of that really with your ISP anyway. The only way you would be able to tilt that upwards is to sign up for a business account, which has a higher SLA or service level agreement where those other parameters are guaranteed. So that's just one thing to be wary of, that it's not going to be solely dependent on bandwidth. And then, of course, you have the other thing that will wind up impacting how these games come down, and it's the principal thing that impacts streaming technologies, is a factor called entropy, which simply means when there's a lot of stuff going on the screen and is varying and changing very quickly, such as in a first-person shooter, then that video signal is inherently less stable, and it's harder for those packets to come together with as much integrity as you would experience if you were playing, say, an RTS or a turn-based strategy game or a card game, right? Because there's not as much variance in the signal. So those are just types of things to be aware of, that your experience while playing, a turn-based strategy game may differ from you trying to play, a first-person shooter. Swiss, you had some things you wanted to bring up about the Founders Edition?
Yeah, you touched on it earlier. There's no note about a generic Stadia Pro, how to purchase it yet. I found that a little bit odd, considering part of their press conference was about how awesome it is to be able to play on any device. Like they went through, like every time they showed the logo, you have like a set of different size screens up there. But the Founders Edition definitely skews towards TV use, because part of the Founders Edition is getting a Chromecast, like whatever the the current Chromecast is. So it definitely is like, we expect you to play on the TV. You can't get in. So say I don't want to play on my TV, but I still want to be in the Founders like base edition. I can't just buy the controller and sign up for Pro right now. So I found that a little bit odd.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I forgot to mention, that you get in the Founders Edition package. You do get a Chromecast Ultra, which right now at MSRP runs about $70. The technology, as far as I understand it, is the game comes into your home through your router, and then if you have additional network equipment, goes there. But then it connects to the controller over Wi-Fi. That signal, and this is a pieces they don't get into. That signal then queues up your Chromecast. Now, the way Chromecast normally works is once you tell the Chromecast what content to display on the TV, at that point, with your phone is then not streaming that content to the Chromecast. The Chromecast is getting that data directly over Wi-Fi. I don't know if that's the same way for Stadia, or if it's a point-to-point connection where it goes from your Wi-Fi router to the controller and then the controller to Chromecast. Again, normally, if I'm watching a YouTube video or Netflix, I just tell the Chromecast, hey, Chromecast, go get this YouTube video or go get this Netflix show. And then the data transfer is directly between the router and Chromecast. So that's a thing that's interesting. A couple of things that really interest me is then, as you mentioned, switch to multiple screens. If I'm using the controller, but I'm playing on my phone, and there's a Stadia app on my phone, which is what's supposed to be coming to Android and iOS, isn't my phone getting the game? So what I need to know, because this is a historic problem with Android, is I need to know that my phone is compatible with that Stadia controller as a controller. And that's a thing that I think we still don't know.
This is speculation, but I do believe that they said during the show that you can use any controller you want, right? They'll use PS4 or Xbox One controllers. They'll support it.
Right. So
if that's the case, then in theory, the stream does not rely. I know they mentioned something that where the controller's involved somehow, but in theory, the stream shouldn't rely on the controller if they're going to allow you to play Assassin's Creed Odyssey on a PS4 controller on my tablet, because then there's only the tablet.
Those controllers are Bluetooth, or are they Wi-Fi also?
They're Wi-Fi.
The Xbox I'm talking about the Xbox and PS4.
The PS4 is definitely Bluetooth.
I think Xbox is as well.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's where I'm confused about that, because initially they had messaged that you could use any controller, but the way that they message how the controller works, it doesn't really seem possible to just grab another controller unless unless it is for a second controller or something. I don't know, and this is where I'm left with a lot more questions.
Yeah,
I think they. Yeah.
I'm sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say you'd lose functionality then, because what their controller has, because obviously you got the screen sharing and all this other stuff that you could do with the Stadia controller. I mean, if you have just like a regular one, or I mean like a Xbox or PS4, or say Nintendo Pro, or what do you call it, Switch Pro, you're not going to have that functionality, obviously. So I don't know. I'm not even sure I think the Pro is Bluetooth too, right? For a Switch. So
yes, it is, and the Pro controller, for instance, is compatible with PC.
Right.
So there's a few different ways this could happen, and Swiss, you're accurate in what you said. What I'm concerned about is actually the other side of that equation. If my phone has a Stadia app on it and it gets the game over Wi-Fi, that's great. What I haven't heard and I'm not certain about is, will Android support the Stadia controller itself as a controller, so that it gets the controller input from my phone? Because Android has long had a problem with controller support. One of the things that they could do, and it's what I hope they're doing, is, and it's kind of what happens in Android a lot, is in Android there's a few different things. Either when you buy just some other third-party controller, you're supposed to download an app from the Google Play Store, and that's what houses the drivers and the compatibility for a wireless controller. So Android won't have native support for that controller. You have a specific app, and the app runs in the background while you're playing a game. Android itself has very generic controller drivers that are pretty horrible. And what you can do in a game is you can say, hey, accept whatever input as this generic controller input, and that will sometimes work, but it's very unreliable. Then the other possibility, as was the case with the NVIDIA Shield, for instance, some games who NVIDIA had partnerships with would have drivers in the game for that NVIDIA controller, such as like the Asphalt series would natively support the NVIDIA Shield controller. So there's three different possibilities there. The worst possibility is that Android or a game or the Stadia app won't support the Stadia controller, and when you play on your phone, you have to have some other input mechanism, phone or a tablet. So that is a thing that to me remains to be seen and causes me a lot of concern, because if I bought the Stadia controller, I want to be able to use that Stadia controller on any of those multiple devices that you mentioned, Swiss, that they show in the branding that you can play Stadia on. So that Stadia controller, I expect and I want it to be compatible with the Chromecast, compatible with PCs, compatible with Android, and compatible with iOS. So I hope at a minimum they're packaging those drivers in the Stadia app. But on a PC, you're playing in a Chrome browser, so I'm hoping that it will be compatible with PC, and there will be x86 drivers you can download to support the controller. Prem, we'll go over to you. Do you plan on using Stadia, and if so, at what subscription level, and why or why not?
Yeah, for right now, I did get the Founders Edition, so that obviously that gets me the Stadia Pro, and I guess I kind of while you guys are talking about this, and I was kind of looking up stuff too, the differences between Stadia Pro and the base. I kind of talked myself down, kind of thinking like, why would they release a free version? But I guess the version's not free, obviously. I'm not going to. That would be something for me as obviously a gaming person that I would go for. I would want more of that Pro version where I can get the discounts and you get the free games and stuff like that. But obviously the base free version is more enticing for the general public. So, but then just using Stadia, just personally, there were some things that I guess I didn't understand at first. Obviously you got to pay for the game still on top of the service, which is you still get free games, so that's fine. That was kind of a tick down for me, but I'm still going to stick with it for now and just see how it all rolls out. Obviously you get the discounts, which is fine. I mean, I buy games at full price anyways. It doesn't matter. But I guess I'm kind of in that zone where I'm like, I don't know if I want to do Pro. And then there was xCloud that there's been some details about that sound a little bit more enticing, but we'll get to that later. And so I don't know. For right now, I got the Founders Edition pre-ordered. I'm getting the controller. I'm getting the Chromecast and all that. So I'm still looking forward to it. It's just to see, just technology wise, like. Obviously, with when they were doing the Assassin's Creed trial or beta, whatever you want to call it, test, that worked flawlessly for me. And then at the time, I had a lower internet speed than I do now, and it was working fine. It was working great. I think I had like 30 download, 30 up, or 30 down, and maybe close to 10 up. So, and I have probably double that now, so it should run fairly well. I don't have a 4K TV, so the 4K not a really big deal for me, but I don't know. 1080p is fine for me right now. So,
did you play on a PC and what kind of controller did you use?
Yeah, I played on my desktop PC, which is just an Asus, just like home. Like I don't use it for games, so it's not super powerful. So I played fine on that. I also played on a Surface Pro. Oh, man, I think it was a 3 or 4. That I used a controller because I just haven't been PC gaming for so long. It's like, I can't do keyboard and mouse anymore. Like even when I was doing the keyboard and mouse on my desktop, it just felt weird. So I plugged in my my Xbox controller, and it played fine. I didn't have any problems with it. There's stutter here, and most of the time, like at the beginning, but once we started playing, after a few minutes, it was fine. So I played both keyboard and controller.
Okay, DBQ.
Yeah, I pre-ordered it as well because I'm interested in the technology. I also did the preview this past fall, played it. It played great, looked beautiful on my desktop. Also ran on a 7-year-old budget Chromebook, super smooth over Wi-Fi. So I think my question, I still have lots of questions about it, and whether or not I keep my pre-order until the time is where I want to find out more information in terms of what that model looks like going forward. How much, what is that? Well, what's going to be included in terms of those free games? And I think the other piece for me is thinking about for games that are not single player, games that are multiplayer. And we get into this with Destiny 2, right? Is that am I only playing if it's not a cross play, am I only playing with Stadia owners, and how big is that population of people? And in Destiny 2's case, it's pretty great because everybody who's getting a Founders Edition will at least have the game. But for other launches, it may be interesting to see if they get what the adoption rate is, and if it's pitched at kind of a more casual crowd, what does that kind of intake and attach rate look like?
Right. Well, you've got one member of your fire team right here. And Swiss, how about you? Are you in? Are you out? And if you're in, how do you see yourself using it?
I'm out.
Okay.
Mostly, I mean, I'm intrigued by the technology. It looked cool. I was actually rather impressed with their press conference. It felt like an E3 press conference. It didn't feel like they just kind of tried to slap something together. But I was weighing the pros and cons, because it wasn't like I saw it and I'm like, this is junk, I don't want it. I thought about it, and one of the so what are the key differentiators that they want with Stadia? One, you can play on any device anywhere. I don't game like that. And we have facsimiles of some of that technology now. So with regards to like within my home, Steam Link allows me, and you're also starting to get into Steam Link Anywhere. I think they announced a little bit while ago. Like, there are ways where I can run my Steam games from my home computer to devices within my house. I don't use it because I like to either play on my TV, I play on my Switch, and I play on my PC. And each one of those locations has some comfort level. I'm not going to go and play Destiny 2, for example, on my smartphone or even really on my tablet. I just
right, just to say you can do it, right?
Right. So that's kind of a technically, yeah, it's interesting, but it's not a killer feature for me. Right now, I don't have the internet to support it. Technically, I could get their 720p, but I'm skeptical because I literally have the maximum at my house is 10 megabits per second DSL, and I just don't really feel like it's going to be until someday I get my fiber, whenever they finally finish, the local company finally gets out here. So the next benefit that they mentioned was no downloads and no updates. That is an issue for me because I literally have to log my gaming PC to my office at work so that I can download Destiny 2 updates or what have you. I brought it the other night so I could download Ace Combat 7 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So that's a thing. But if I had the ISP to support a nice Stadia connection, I wouldn't be as worried about those updates. So, and finally, there is an appeal to having my games local and not completely 100% reliant on my ISP, which is why other options, which I know Prime alluded to, that we're going to see later in like Xbox, and I am sure we're going to see some form or fashion with Sony, are probably going to be more appealing to me as a gamer, more hybrid approaches. So for now, I don't think it's worth the investment for me.
Gotcha. So most of my problem with a lot of the dialogue that I've seen going around the internet, and this is not to say anything about what you guys have mentioned, because I think you're talking about it from a fundamentally different perspective, is a lot of the people that are negative about Stadia are having this discussion about it needing to be this be-all, end-all, singular, holistic, one-stop gaming replacement. And I don't feel like for $10 a month it needs to be that, at least not for me. So I'm in. I pre-ordered the Founders Edition. I also ordered a second controller. And for me, this is going to be this is a gap filler. what this might be for me is if a game comes to the service that's free that I'm not planning on playing, or I just don't have time to get around to it. And it's a good game, because even when games are free, I don't have time to play bad games. This might be a way that I try it out, right? Like that, if that game comes there and it's not also on Game Pass, or it's not on Game Pass for PC, this might be a way that I try it out. I talked with you guys a little bit about how during the holiday season, I get inundated with this feeling that there's a lot of games that I need to play that I don't necessarily have time to play, but I still buy them. If those games are on Stadia, I may not do that this year, right? I may not have that surge funding for my game budget where, in October, November, and December, it balloons from, what I normally pay throughout the year to twice as much if those games are on Stadia. There are some smaller bitwise use cases where a game drops, I missed the release date because I wasn't paying attention. I want a physical copy. I got to find time in my logistics schedule, my daily commute to get to GameStop, or I order it from Amazon Prime, but it still needs 2 days to ship. If it's got an account associated with it, like let's say it's an Ubisoft game, right? And my progress is saved within Uplay. Maybe I go ahead and get it started on Stadia, and then continue it when I get my physical copy. The big thing for me too is travel. This and I mentioned to you guys what this may kill is it may kill me maintaining a gaming laptop, right? Because I maintain a gaming laptop so that I can game when I travel, but I don't really travel frequently enough to totally justify the cost of like a $1,000 gaming laptop. If now when I go to places where there's not a lot of things for me to do, like happens when I go on family vacations, if I can just throw my Stadia controller and I'm taking my phone anyway in my bag, and that allows me to continue my progress and get the Division 2 in or whatever, that's of sufficient value to me to warrant the $10 a month. So like I said, a lot of the people that I see with the negative commentary around the internet, I just don't think their analysis is coming from the right vector for them to arrive at the conclusion that this is a useless service and that it's not worthwhile. Any other use cases or any other type of consumer or type of gamer that you guys can think of who this might be for? My principal use case is people who are travels. I think even people who are high travel, I think this is really great for them. Maybe not necessarily for business travelers because hotel Wi-Fi can be questionable. But for people who frequently go home, or people, I mean, I don't necessarily, if you're in a long-term relationship, I don't know that your focus should be on gaming when you get to the other end. However, sometimes people have different sleep schedules and whatnot, and but it's possible that frequent flyers who do wind up in places of good bandwidth on the other end, that this could be useful for them. Anything else that you guys can think of?
I can see it as, in our family, I can see it as just an in-house use. The ability of, as other TVs are occupied or the gaming TV is occupied, the ability to plug that Chromecast into any other one around the house, or if you are a limited TV family, having the ability to pop it up on my tablet or on a PC, on a laptop, like you said, I think allows me to pick up, and if I can pick that save up anywhere, if I can be playing my Destiny character on the TV downstairs at night, but pick it up, and watch some TV with the family or do some other things, there is some benefit there. And I think that is where it gets some use, and that is where I think it might find a more broad market.
Yep. And PCs sometimes go down and they're not available. In systems engineering, we have the thing we talk about systems availability, right? Like I just spent hours getting that PC over there behind me groomed up so I could freaking get Xbox PC Game Pass on it. Because to do that, you need all sorts of Windows updates, right? That's a scenario where maybe I go and I play on Stadia, right, while I'm waiting. So I think Prime may have had something else to say about Stadia. Prime, did you have anything else to say about Stadia before we move on to?
Yeah, I was just say I think long term, excuse me, what would get me into this, keep me into it, I should say, is the multiplayer, like DB was talking about. If they get that nailed down, obviously it's that's a whole different animal if you're just playing single player story. But I mean, I could see myself just using this as single player gaming, obviously for the meantime. Plus, like even with on this, like when I'm playing on the Switch, I don't really like to play like Fortnite and some of the other multiplayer games, just because it's a tiny screen if I'm doing it handheld. So I want to be on a monitor or my TV and stuff like that. So this would be perfect for I'm on the bus or something, I'm going somewhere, or wherever I'm going, and I could just pop in Tomb Raider or whatever is out at the time. So I think that's good too.
Okay, on to Bungie and Destiny 2's announcements, which went down the same day after the Stadia conference was over. Tale of the tape, number one, Bungie just rolled hard and leaned into characterizing Destiny 2 as an MMO. They mentioned that you will now have a single evolving world, which I think a few of us have assess that what we think they mean is that it's going to be a single instanced world in terms of when a singular long-term event happens, or when a world class event happens, that will have singular lasting impact on the world. So when a particular enemy is defeated, or a new faction appears or goes away, or a leader is taken down or something like that, you will have these WoW-like events where a major NPC in the world could die or could change factions, and that will impact everyone who plays the game. Big announcement is that you will now have cross save. We don't know exactly how that will work, but basically the advertisement is that you will be able to take characters that you have on other platforms, and they will be saved in a singular holistic ecosystem. Again, we don't know what that means in terms of how you have 3 character slots per platform right now. Does that mean you're going to get more? Is it going to require you to have overwrites? Is there going to be some unification or harmonization of characters, but no increase in character slots? So that news is still to come. Overall,
there's a little bit out there on that from listening to DCP, so Destiny Community Podcast was talking about that. And it was, I think, in some of the follow-up questions that came later during the day on Twitter, that yes, it would be, they were talking about making choices about which character slots they save, because it sounds like it is, it would overwrite, that you could bring over, you would decide what platform is the save that you want to be the cross save on. But it did not also sound like it would be a merging of, I could pick a character on PSC and another character on PS4 and have them combined together. It seemed a little bit like you choose your one, and that's the one that will volley back and forth.
Okay, gotcha. Big announcement is that they kept talking about that Destiny 2 is coming to Steam, and it's actually up and available now for pre-order. I don't know, and we'll kick it around as to whether or not that means it is a wholesale move from your Battle.net account over to Steam, or if it's a new instance that's available on Steam. As far as I understand, so they mentioned that they're also invoking a free-to-play model called Destiny New Light, which will allow new onboarding players to restart. I believe if you start on a new platform, for instance on Stadia, that you could also reset and gain access to, as far as I understand it, Destiny 1 content to kick that off, because they mentioned that your character, through that new light pathway, your character goes back to the beginning of Destiny 1. It's not clear to me. I'm guessing that all the Destiny 1 content will then be there as well, but I don't know.
No, it sounds like it's only about a 10-minute mission. It's the kind of opening mission where you would go down, get your first gun, get your first ship, and then it would bring you over to the tower.
Yeah, but then what they talk about is then you being able to join up with a party and access additional mission content beyond that point. It's not clear to me where that starting point is.
Well, I think that is because you start at, well, right, and some of this is still speculation, or not. We're supposing. They have said that you will start at 750,
right?
Which I think is where it would allow you to jump in with other players, because they would be starting at 750. The public zones will also be open and available, even if you don't have the story content in those planets. So I think that's another place where they're hooking that ability of people playing together even without all the content.
Right. And I guess the last bullet is Shadowkeep, the DLC/expansion, which drops this fall, will be $35. Again, if you are not, in Stadia or via some other vehicle that gets you that content for free or via some kind of a discount. So DBQ, you had a comment about Bungie's recharacterization of the game as an MMO?
Yeah, but I think we're hitting on it in terms of the different types of world pieces, and for the sake of time, I'm just let's keep on rolling with it.
Okay. Prime, I mentioned about cross saves.
Yeah, I guess I'm just still confused on it, like how it's gonna work. But I guess we really don't know. From what I read, it looked like you just like once you save to a certain area, like if you switch over from like say PC to from PS4 to PC or something like it. That's it. You're going to do it one way or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I was just reading it wrong, or I don't know. I guess, like I said, we got to get more detail on that. So
yeah, and I know DBQ has found some information out. I feel like this thing is so potentially complex and so delicate that I'm just unwilling to believe anything until because picking a platform still leaves open the question: is it wholesale or is it per character per platform? So yeah,
I think there's lots of questions there, right? Even if I would pick that, which character I wanted to cross save, is it always going to be pulling that down from a server every time I log in, whether it's Stadia or PC or Xbox? Or is it, like you're saying, Prime, is it really just, is it a migration versus a cross save?
Right. And then Swiss, you had something you want to mention about it coming to Steam.
Yeah, I got the impression that you definitely would be able to migrate from Battle.net to Steam. Like you said, I'm not sure if that's like they're just completely leaving Battle.net or not. But I definitely got the impression that they would facilitate that move somehow, which I'm kind of pleased about because Steam is my primary PC platform.
It is a move off. So again, on the DCP podcast, it is a move off of Battle.net. That you cannot buy Shadowkeep on Battle.net at this point. And so it is how that move happens, how much they migrate, friends lists and other things like that will be a question. But it is kind of the dissolvement of the Activision partnership.
I can't even imagine. Like I've been part of migrations. Just say like email or something. And I can't even imagine a migration like this from like a wholly, totally different system. I mean, it's just kudos to them if they can pull it off. So
yeah. It could just be a forklift, right? I mean, there could be. I mean, we would think that hopefully there's some server separation between Battle.net infrastructure and the actual Destiny game platform. So it could be forklifting the Destiny servers, putting them inside a Bungie, data center or perimeter or tenancy, and then just decoupling them from the Battle.net front end and reconnecting them to a Steam. A Bungie or Steam front end. Yeah. I would hope. Otherwise, it's going to get very nasty and very tricky.
It's going to be messy, especially if a programmer like has some like weird like
hit the wrong button.
Yeah, or just like had some like safe password that only was like into that one username, and it just screws everything up, which I've seen before. So
right. So any comments on people who are in or out? I'm in. I'm getting it at least on Stadia. I may replicate that across PC. Anybody else firmly in or firmly out?
Well, I'll be getting. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll be getting 2 copies. So
okay, on what PC and
probably Steam and Steam.
Okay, I got you. Yep, gotcha. Prime.
Yeah, I'll have it because of Stadia also. So
okay,
for at least 3 months.
DBQ, I guess, are you in and getting the expansion, and on what platform?
Yeah, my Kate on my shoulder says I am in. The question is the cross save piece, where I could be in on multiple platforms. Really, if at this point I'll be in on PC for sure. I would love to have the ability to take my PC character over to Xbox and rejoin some people over on Xbox while maintaining progress on PC. So I'm really curious to see. It's not going to be if I buy it; it's going to be how many copies.
Okay. We're going to move on to EA Play. I'm going to try and pick out the highlights from those, and then you guys can weigh in on them. Obviously, we saw Jedi Fallen Order. It was demonstrated on Xbox. It was alpha game footage. And then, interestingly enough, as far as my notes indicate, we didn't get a release date at EA Play. The release date was actually shown during the Xbox demo as a November 2019 release. The general gist of it is this is after Order. One of you Star Wars fans needs to tell me, is it 66 or Order
Yes,
66?
Order 66.
Yes.
Okay, where the clone army was told to eradicate all of the Jedi. The main character of the story was a Padawan at the time. We don't know exactly what happened to his master, but apparently he was outed, and it has been revealed to some number of people in the galaxy that he is a Jedi. He then joins up with Forrest Whitaker's character. You guys are going to have to remind me of the name.
Sal Guerrero.
Saul Guerrera, and then joins some type of renegade outcast force, something, and proceeds to try and have negative impact on the Empire. Again, this is by the development studio that largely, from a DNA perspective, has a thread all the way back to the Call of Duty franchise, and then has since gone on to do Titanfall and Titanfall 2, and has a different development team that is working on Apex Legends. Any comments from the footage that you guys saw?
I was actually pretty excited for it. I mean, like I said, I'm a sucker for Star Wars, so I'll pretty much play anything. Seems a little bit slower, and I've seen like comments saying it's like a little clunkier as far as the movement and stuff. Kind of a more clunkier version of Jedi Outcast or Academy, those kind of type of games. But it still looks pretty cool to me. I'm excited for it. I was excited to see Forrest Whitaker's character Saul Guerrero, just because I thought he was kind of interesting in Rogue One, and it's nice to see a little bit more of him. And I guess he was kind of younger version was in Rebels, I believe, which I unfortunately didn't get to watch, so I don't really know backstory too much of him. So it'd be kind of nice to see him a little bit more. So I'm excited.
All right. Any other comments on Fallen Order?
Yeah, I'm gonna play the bad cop. It kind of looked to my comment that I put in my notes was Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order looks like a pretty generic action game with the coat of Star Wars paint. So and also had a note, how many times do we have to see load the disc into the droid routine in Star Wars? But no, the AI didn't seem very good, and the maps, like they just kind of were standing around, and like the maps definitely seemed to funnel the player. So there was zero in the demo open world exploration. Said the combat didn't excite me like God of War. There was no little tactical or environmental excitement for me like Horizon Zero Dawn. When they were showing like this anti-Jedi special dude, like kind of mini boss battle, I couldn't tell who was winning or getting damaged or anything. It was just kind of like they were like standing around each other, swinging their lightsabers, and then he fell down and died. So I did make a note. One, maybe this is due to the alpha nature stage of the game. But two, I saw like the next day, like it might have been before the Xbox stream, I was watching like the IGN, and they made a comment that the developers were like, oh yeah, there's going to be a hub world and there's going to be a lot more exploration. So the limited scope of the demo must have been a sticking point, I'm guessing. But it just did not feel. When I saw trailers for the game and like cinematic stuff, I got more excited about the story and the plot. When I saw the gameplay, it just became kind of mediocre for me.
Gotcha. I'm going to go ahead and blow past the Apex stuff just because as I'm looking through picking up the high level items, and Swiss, I will ask for your comment, but I don't see, there wasn't really anything about Apex that really, in my mind, moves the industry, and I think we'll have opportunities throughout the year to come back to that to talk about its financial impact and what it's doing in the competitive space. They're dropping season 2 on July 2nd, so we'll probably have a chance to talk about it then. They did introduce a new character, which has more of a strategic and a defensive impact, which I think will change the dynamics of the game a little bit. We'll have time to talk about whether or not that has any industry impact. either evolving the art of the battle royale games or financial impact. Swiss, did you have something specific you wanted to mention about Apex Legends?
I agree with you that adding like a tactically significant character is a good thing. What struck me about the press conference for Apex was a lot of what they were showing off were literally skins, and like, oh look, there's some new skins, and they had one new weapon that they were showing off. And maybe I'm just not enough in the battle royale culture to feel like that's significant.
That's
But
pretty much all that culture is.
okay, so I wrote, why are you hyped about skins? So it just it felt like it reinforced my perception of the game, that it was a rapid development experiment that seemed to kind of work, and they threw it out there. But I don't think there's much depth there. They also mentioned there's a ranked mode coming, and I put a note that even Nintendo had that in Splatoon 2. Why was that not included in the base game? So
yeah, that will be an interesting impact, right? The quintessential problem with Apex Legends is, I think, philosophically, almost religiously, that development team wanted to make a team-based battle royale game, not something that aggrandizes the individual. And so it's tightly coupled into squads, it's tightly coupled into communications, and that I still don't have a warm fuzzy in terms of understanding how does a ranked mode work unless you like average the rank across a squad of 3 people and then matchmake based on like that average or the median. So it's a little weird, but I know that a lot of the gamers who play it are in that culture where their egos are wrapped around their rank. And so there's been a demand to enable that. My problem is and obviously I go through this on a daily basis. Swiss, I think you go through a little bit too, is like when you design something, when you architect something, you normally have these small number of religious tenets that you're like, this product is this and it's not that. And this may break that. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. For Battlefield 5, there are a couple of things that I did want to pick out of here because there were some things that I think are a larger impact on the industry. There's a ton of content coming out. Chapter 4 comes out this summer, I believe, and then Chapter 5 is later in the fall. October is listed as the time in between 4 and 5. There's kind of a rolling thunder wave of incremental updates that are coming out in between that as well, where the max rank is going to be raised to 500, and that happens in August. From somebody who's interested in the history of World War II and enjoys Battlefield 5 from the aspect of these interesting little, like, one thing that I find interesting about Battlefield is when they drop a new map, it makes me hit the Wikipedia in a history book and go, oh man, that, like, I never knew those things, happened, or that this was even a venue of battle in World War II. I did a lot of that when I played the, I'm forgetting the name of them, DBQ, help me out. The single player, the war stories.
Yeah, the war stories, yep.
And you get a little bit of that continuing in multiplayer. With Chapter 5, which drops this fall/winter, they're opening up the Pacific Theater. You will go back to Iwo Jima and get to delve into that area of history. The biggest announcement out of this for me is it's the return of private servers. And so a big thing that's going to happen now is now you will have, once again, we had this ability all the time on PC. Call of Duty, in my mind, is the franchise that I accredit as being the one that started to kind of walk this back, and the rest of the industry followed. But now this is an ability for you to stand up a server, and apparently, as far as I understand it is a new executable that you would deploy on a PC to run that private server. Not saying that you couldn't concurrently play on it, but again, way back in the day, for games like this, sometimes you would have a box that would just run your server, and then you would be gaming on another one. But you will have control of that server. You will be able to ensure that cheating doesn't occur. And if you see it occurring, you can boot the person. You will be able to password protect it and restrict it to only being accessible to people that you know or people that you want to invite. and it gives you a much better opportunity to control the gameplay and have the type of experience that you want to have. DBQ, you wanted to get in on this as well?
Yeah, I just think I think that piece is very significant from Battlefield as a platform, right? And I think the other piece of introducing the Pacific Theater makes it much more of a platformer as well, because it opens up a whole new history in terms of an additional maps they can keep moving down in that direction. My only question is, I'm excited for this, but my question still is, what's the monetary model there, right? Where all of this is coming for people who own it. Is the real hope here is that they come Christmas time, they bundle this back up with everything and try to make it sound a little more robust than it was last year. But again, it's a solid game that probably like other games released pretty thin and has developed into something significant.
Yeah, I can't tell like I have, and I guess I bought the season 1 pass. I don't have it in my notes anywhere, a strong indication that chapters 4 and 5 are free. If this is still part of the first year annual pass, or if one of these is the dividing line into the next year where you would have to pay. The one thing I do have noted is that the private server, that package, that download is free for owners of the game, so you don't have to pay anything more in to be able to run your own private server. And they do say at least all of this content, what I wrote is you get it via any of the paths to EA's subscription services on all platforms.
Right, and I don't know that they've ever talked about it as a season. I think they intentionally were very much about, this is a lot of free content after DICE's experience with Battlefront. So it'll be interesting when they start using that language about this is the end of the first season, right? And opens that door for when they could start charging things again.
Right. So very quickly, announcements from EA Originals. 3 or 4 studios were included in that follow-up video after EA Play. We know that we're getting Sea of Solitude on July 5th from Joe My Games. Hazelight, who are the guys who did A Way Out, and I think of also, Brothers. They are working on a new game, was not titled or revealed, but he did mention that it will give players a fresh new take on the challenges of working together, was all he was willing to say. Of course, that has been the mold for that studio. They did Brothers, which was a highly cooperative game, and then obviously A Way Out, where you had to work together to get the 2 felons out of prison. The short also featured Zoink Games, who are the guys who did Faye. Their next upcoming game is Lost in Random, a blend of strategy and action that explores the notion of chance and possibility set within a beautifully dark and vivid world. Glowmade, who make their EA debut, is working on a co-op action RPG called Rust Heart that follows the player and their handmade robot sidekick as they adventure across a vibrant alien multiverse. They also described it as a compelling mix of tactical action role-play gameplay, allowing for player invention and spray paint. So EA continuing to beat the drum with some degree of originals that are coming out from their publishing house. And sorry, Flock is being slow. So that brings us around to the Xbox conference. And what we'll do is we'll get this started, and then we'll see how much we get through, and then in chat you guys can let me know if you want to continue and run over a bit or delay some of this till part 2. Obsidian, who was one of the studios that Microsoft purchased last year, is working on Outer Worlds. Obviously, that game was dated with an October 25th, 2019 release date. Ninja Theory debuted a new game called Bleeding Edge, which is an online melee 4v4 game. Has a technical alpha on the 27th of June. Prime, did you have comments you wanted to make about Bleeding Edge?
Yes, as soon as I unmute here. I wanted to mirror my my statement during when we were watching this this press conference that this gave me that well, at the time this gave me like a Gotham City Imposters kind of vibe to it. But now after seeing some of the gameplay, this is like, you know, third person kind of battle, and Gotham City Imposters is more first person thing, but it could still be kind of wacky and kind of zany and kind of like how that was. And I don't know. I didn't realize it was going to be a third person, you know, 4-4. So, but yeah, that was it. That was all my comments.
Okay, Minecraft Dungeons was also shown, as well as Ori, which was dated with a February 2020 release date. Comments on Minecraft Dungeons from our Minecraft players.
I was just very surprised about this one. Didn't see this one coming. It's kind of like a, you know, RPG Diablo kind of a, you know, cross with Minecraft. So it looks pretty cool. I mean, I'm definitely gonna, you know, pick it up and play it. Also announced for the Switch today, so that was kind of interesting.
Right.
They're kind of cross-platform. I don't know if it's going to come out for, you know, PS4 or PC. I think PC also they might have announced at some point. I'm not sure about that, but
I think it's coming out for all platforms. I'm pretty sure I saw like pretty much everything on the bottom, all the logos. I'm actually going to get both of those games. I showed my sons who are like super into Minecraft, Minecraft Dungeons, and my 5-year-old is pretty much asked me about it every single day since then. So it's going to be a long way until 2020, but it's, you know, it's probably definitely a pickup for us.
Very cool. So at that point in the conference, we had Phil Spencer finally come out on stage. He talked a lot about Unity inclusiveness. This is part of the new Microsoft advertising, branding, and marketing campaign, which is games everywhere and games for everyone. Specifically, I think that they're talking largely about both racial, sexual orientation and inclusiveness, gender inclusiveness, but also there's a very large drumbeat about being inclusive of people who have physical constraints, such as people who can't hold controllers, you know, as well, people who are visually impaired. We obviously had the release of the adaptive controller earlier this year to address some of those things. Spencer also mentioned that this was the largest showcase of games anywhere at the E3 press conference this year. He's probably right. Sometimes I get a little wary when grandiose statements like that are thrown out. 60 games were shown in the conference, 14 from first party. Swiss, you had some negative views on the first party titles?
Yeah, and as far as like the unity and inclusiveness, I guess maybe I wasn't like I was doing other things. I didn't get that vibe. I got mostly that as like when I kind of overheard him say that, I was more thinking in terms of we're trying to be, you know, cross-platform friendly, and it was more like a shot at Sony rather than any political statement. But granted, I was doing other things, and you know, I would prefer the companies not try to appeal to I guess different racial or anything like stuff like that. I just want them to treat people like like gamers and just like, look, we all share this hobby. Let's just have fun with it. I kind of chafe a little bit at trying to you know, the identity politics angle. I think I'd be more inclined to support a company that is like, I don't really worry about your skin color. I'm glad that we're having fun together. But so that's kind of like my thoughts on that. But as far as the games, it definitely felt like the end of the console cycle. I felt like the biggest games they were showing, with the exception of Halo Infinite at the end, and I guess the Gears, like I'm not a Gears guy, but they felt like the big games were like Cyberpunk, and they weren't their first party games. So it just didn't feel, with the games aspect, it didn't feel like a major E3 for Microsoft.
Okay. I'm having a hard time letting some of those go, but I will. 30 games were premiered on Game Pass. for this E3. One of the games again that had an initial demo was Fallen Order, which I personally felt like the Microsoft trailer and what was put on display was better than what was shown at EA Play. It is up and available for pre-order on the Xbox Store now. And the release date, again, was shown 11/15/2019. So it misses, strangely enough, the critical Veterans Day 3-day weekend, where it could have gotten some big uptake, but drops in nicely as something you might pick up and play over the Thanksgiving break. They also showed a Blair Witch title, which a lot of people, including myself, thought was an Alan Wake game. But it turned out to be Blair Witch. They also demonstrated Flight Simulator, and it looked absolutely gorgeous. Swiss, help me out. Is this an Xbox game, or is this a PC title, or both? That seemed to be very unclear.
I didn't see it during the conference, but as soon as it came up, I thought of you because I feel like there was an episode however long back, where you lamented the lack of simulators, like flight simulators, currently available. And I went back through, and they had in 2012 they had Flight, I think, and it wasn't even really a flight simulator game from what I understand. You have to go all the way back to 2006, I believe, with Flight Simulator X, I think it was.
Yeah. Yep.
So that actually got me excited. This is actually my dark horse surprise announcement. After the fact, my dad's retired Air Force, and I wanted to, I told him about it, and he got excited about it because he played Flight Simulator way back in the day. He actually wants to get a used Xbox specifically so he can play this. So when I was telling him about it, I did check on their page online. It says Xbox and PC. Okay. So it's going to come to both. And yeah, like this guy hasn't played a game since like probably Super Mario Brothers 3, and then a little bit of Flight Simulator back in like Windows 98. But he's probably going to get a used Xbox specifically for this game. So that was kind of an intriguing little tidbit from that.
Very cool. I find it an interesting play if it's with it going to Xbox. So like, this is not a thing that I want to play with an Xbox One controller. It's nice that it's being updated and refreshed for PC. I've tried within the past year getting back into Flight Simulator. There is a bug with the Steam version where you can play it, but when you try and save flights, you can't get back to it, and you have to do a bunch of shenanigans to try and get it working again, none of which actually worked for me. So it's a game that I have, and I can start a flight, but if I don't finish it, I can't get back to it. I actually wound up buying X-Flight 11, I think, on Steam to kind of replace that itch. Like I said, it looked gorgeous. And I have 4K monitors, so one thing about Flight Simulator is it is always maxed out with whatever a PC can accommodate. So this will be a great game to play on PC with my RTX 2070 and my flight control systems. Should be fairly interesting. Forza Horizon, surprisingly, Forza was absent from the conference this year. Now we know why, because that team is obviously being spooled up for Scarlet development. But Forza Horizon 4 from Playground Studios did announce an expansion pack featuring Legos. DBQ?
Yeah, this was actually a surprise, right? We knew, or at least I thought we knew, that we weren't getting a Forza game this fall. So they've only had one expansion so far within Horizon 4. So, and for it to be a Lego game and to have some pretty good, what appears to be some pretty good physics. Again, we got a lot of kind of a mix. We got some actual gameplay in it, but a lot of kind of theme CG as well. But there does seem, so this is the expansion that comes out in 2 days from now. It comes out on Friday. It comes out, Thursday. It comes out on the 13th. You made the guy without a tooth say 13th? Oh, man. But it has, in reading the description on the game store, that there is some building, there's some construction of tracks and some aspects there. So there's a little bit of creativity there. But this was my surprise from the show, that you know, a lot of the other stuff we knew about, you know, but this was kind of a fun. And again, I was watching the show with my son, so we got excited about Battletoads and 3-player couch co-op. You know, we got excited about some Gears and some couch co-op. You know, so we were looking for things that were kind of fun, and something that could be experienced collaboratively. So in this definitely lands in the fun zone for some racing.
Very cool. This game is available on Game Pass for PC. I don't know if the DLC comes with it. I can't remember.
No, it doesn't, because I have Game Pass, and you've been able to, even before Game Pass PC, you've been able to play Horizon 4 on PC.
Right.
But the expansions, both this and the Storm Island or whatever it's called,
Fortune Island,
you need to purchase separately. But again, if you have Game Pass, you get a discount. So for $18, this is an easy yes for me for this week.
Okay, you're good. Another game that was announced, and again, we're not covering every single game that was announced. I just didn't have the fortitude to sit there and pause the sizzle reel every 2 seconds to try and get like all the indie titles and all that stuff this year. But Phoenix Point looked interesting. It is a multiplayer co-op game that looks like a mashup between kind of Halo and Gears, and drops on September of this year. Both this game and actually DBQ, if you want to go back and look at it, more gameplay was shown of Forza Horizon for Lego at the Inside Xbox show, which took place the Monday after the main E3 press conference from Microsoft. And then probably the biggest deal of the show was Cyberpunk 2077 was displayed. I say displayed because there was a heavy amount of cutscenery up front, and then a sizzle reel kind of where you did see some views of gameplay from the actual character perspective. Keanu Reeves was brought out on stage, which just knocked me out of my seat entirely, because it was heretofore unknown that he was even involved with this project. At one point, he mentioned that the game looked breathtaking, and somebody from the crowd screamed out, "You're breathtaking." That person was awarded a free collector's edition of Cyberpunk 2077, which they will receive when the game launches. It is up. It was immediately up for pre-order in the Xbox Store. While this whole conference was going on, the Xbox Store, by the way, the Microsoft Store, was in varying states of like being down and up as they posted things that were being announced in the press conference. They did show actual gameplay, and the biggest thing was a release date was announced for April 16th of 2020. Prime, your comments?
I just want to say I'm pretty excited for this game. These CD Project Red, these guys are makers of Witcher, excuse me. So this looks, just up my alley. I always like the cyberpunk kind of, futuristic setting and stuff like that. So one game I kind of regret never playing is Syndicate. I don't know, for good or for bad. I don't know if that was, a great game or not, a good game, but this looks like it kind of ups the ante on even that game. So kind of, Syndicate and Watch Dogs, you can like control stuff and with all your cybernetics and stuff like that. So it looks like it's right up my alley.
Swiss?
Yeah, I agree. It looked pretty cool. It looked pretty raw, but the world looks very detailed. And I thought the Keanu Reeves edition was kind of a perfect fit of an actor into like kind of a story. So yeah, I was also kind of surprised by it, and I thought it was kind of cool. So,
number one, I want to ask nobody's going to do a mea culpa for their predictions that this was an Xbox Scarlet game and would not see a release date in the light of the Xbox One generation?
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll say that. I'm surprised. I really thought, especially given CD Projekt Red's kind of pedigree of graphical fidelity, that this was definitely going to be coming out. And this is where it'll be interesting to see how this happens. Is that it? Given the infrastructure, given the makeup of both what seemed to be the PS5 and the Scarlet, but they can release this game in April, in the spring, and put out a patch come the fall to be able to, those assets are going to be at a high enough quality that they should be able to run and get some beef out of it with the new systems.
And one would think CD Projekt Red is already in possession of a Scarlet dev kit, and that content may be there in the game latent. And as soon as you buy what I am going to start rapidly classifying as your Xbox GPU and CPU upgrade in the holiday season, then just like, when you bump to an RTX card, it will auto set its configuration so that it just plays with the enhancements.
If you think about it, like they're also targeting PC, so they're already hitting high
4K, 60 frames per second, yeah,
and
blah, blah, blah. HDR.
And I will also do a mea culpa on that, and a mea culpa on we're not going to talk about tonight, but I was like 100% certain that Death Stranding was not going to release this cycle, and that is another one that surprised me in a good way.
Right. So we also had the head of Xbox Partnership, Sarah Bond, who again is an African-American woman, who came out, and she came out after the Indie Sizzle Reel and indicated that all of those games that were shown as part of the id and Xbox program, their indie program, will be coming to Game Pass. But the larger announcement, which she also made, is that today, or that day of the press conference, they rolled out Xbox Game Pass for PC, as well as the Game Pass Ultimate subscription levels. So Game Pass Ultimate is the new program where for $15 a month, you get Xbox Live Gold, as well as Xbox Game Pass, which now includes Xbox Game Pass on PC. So if you atomize it and think about it, it is 3 subscription services for the price of $15 a month. There's all types of stacking that you can do with your current subscription and any other deals that you've gotten, largely. And right now it's available for $1. So you can, if you're a current Xbox subscriber and you flip to Game Pass Ultimate, pay $1, it adds 1 month onto your furthest out subscription end date, and auto levels you up across all 3 of those subscription services. And I don't think we need to go back into a definition of Game Pass. On PC, just be aware, as I kind of mentioned before, first of all, your PC has to be updated to the 1903 creators update. So the first spring update is what you need to be up to. You may actually need to be up to the update this year was weird. There was a problem with the spring update. They have now done a secondary update. So there's a build 1903 and a build 1906. You have to at least be up to 1903. It may push you to get up to 1906 as well. The Xbox application that enables PC Game Pass is a separate app from the Microsoft Store, which requires you to download it. It's weird because they're pushing you to download this additional app, but the reality is the app is really just a view. So nothing has changed on the back end. The app is just a front end pathway to access the back end of the Microsoft Store. But there's a significant number of games available on Game Pass. As DB mentioned, all the first-party titles that you've been able to play up until now, which include Gears of War 4 and Forza Horizon 4, are in Game Pass. Interestingly enough, Forza Horizon 3 is not, but there is the Gears of War OG remaster that's available there, as well as games which I have downloaded, like Sunset Overdrive, Wolfenstein 2, New Colossus, and Metro Exodus was another big AAA title that I downloaded, as well as Wasteland 2, the Director's Cut. All games which have very high ratings on Metacritic are available in PC Game Pass. You do have to update, and you're gonna have to run the update if you're not accustomed to doing this. Windows Update is a thing that when you are trying to install something that requires it, You need to run it, get the updates, let it do however many restarts it needs to do, and keep running Windows Update until it's clear of all the updates. This PC that I'm on now, I updated it once and everything with PC Game Pass worked. My primary gaming PC behind me, I had to run several updates before I could download stuff from the PC Game Pass store. But there's a lot of good content there that you will have access to. And then, Prime, you wanted to mention something about Game Pass Ultimate?
I think this was just a big surprise for me that it was kind of bundled in with Ultimate Game Pass, and we kind of knew about that part already, but not about the PC Game Pass, that it was going to be kind of folded into all that with no extra costs. So I think that's really cool. And then we'll get the MCC and my Chief Collection when it comes out on PC too.
Yep.
So that should be good.
Yep. And that is, and again, it's technically a beta. I guess the formal rollout of Xbox Game Pass for PC is in August.
Yeah.
And then the biggest announcement, Xbox Scarlet Holiday 2020. Unfortunately, and it's a little weird, I was fine with it, but I mean, we're definitely inside baseball and understanding some of this technology. It was pretty much the exact same specs as have been advertised in the Wired article for the PlayStation 5, including them even talking about the super fast SSD. Again, this doesn't surprise me because it's the same architecturally, it's the same CPU that they're using and the same GPU that they're using. They might actually be almost the exact same SKU, with the only deltas being in firmware and some specific code that's being applied. But it's highly possible that the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One Scarlet are the exact same hardware. So there weren't really any surprise. Actually, the surprise to me was that it's the exact same hardware. What the announcement left out for me is, as far as we know, there have been 2 projects that have been leaked that were going on inside Microsoft, a Project Scarlet as well as a Project Anaconda. My understanding also from the beginning of time was that originally when these things started to come out, that there were 3 SKUs that Microsoft was working on for their next generation gaming ecosystem. And then most recently that there were 2. My understanding being that one of those was going to be a very low end system that would just run off of a streaming service. And I thought actually that was originally Scarlet, and that Anaconda was the heavier metal performance-based Xbox PC. Now it appears that it's Scarlet, so that leaves outstanding, well, what is Project Anaconda, and is that still coming? There was also a concurrent announcement of Project xCloud, which I believe the rollout of that, if anybody remembers, I don't have it right here for me, I think is October technically. And that actually has 2 implementations that will be available. One will be for you to receive those games via a data center, or probably multiple data centers, where literally they are just running a crap ton of Xboxes to serve the game out to you. The other option will be for you to utilize your own Xbox One as a Project xCloud server. I have not dug deeper into what that means. I'm not particularly crazy about that idea for a few reasons, because that means outgoing ports that are opened on your own in-home firewall, which I'm not particularly crazy about. Like, for instance, I don't use my own personal Western Digital cloud-based NAS because I don't want that data streaming in and out of my security perimeter. The other thing, reason, I mean, we'll probably talk more eventually about this versus Stadia. Prime, you kind of mentioned that. What I prefer about Stadia is I don't like, even when we talk back in the day when we talked about PlayStation remote access, I never liked using that technology, because when I'm on travel, like when my family, when we're all gone, it's not atypical for there to be a storm and there to be electrical power dropped out. I can't see the console, so I don't know if it's not working, if it's because, right, of whatever. So I personally prefer the Stadia implementation where that stuff is just all in a data center. Now, of course, the reality is I'll have access to both. Again, in that gap filler mentality of just having all the bases covered. But surprisingly, none of you guys put your names by the Scarlet announcement. I assume you have things that you want to say. BBQ, who is currently unmuted, first to the fight.
Actually, before I turn it over to Scarlet, I want to stick with the xCloud piece, because that's the piece that I was surprised we didn't get more detail. Right. I can understand in Scarlett's case because they're still in this kind of we don't want to tip all of our hand and have Sony do what they did last time in terms of combating that. But I really thought xCloud was further along. I thought we were going to get more information around that. I thought it was going to come as a pretty serious competitor to Stadia. And for as much information as Stadia dropped at us on Thursday, I left xCloud feeling excited about the potential because I already live in that infrastructure, but feeling disappointed at the fact that there wasn't, the rollout for this fall is really only, at least from what I'm reading, that it's about using your Xbox as a server. It's not about the cloud-based piece at this stage.
Yeah, that's curious. I'm not positive. I guess I feel I need to think about it a little bit more. I feel like there's got to be something data center enabled even for you to use your Xbox One. But at any rate, and this applies to Scarlett as well, my feeling about this press conference is I don't really know, and I think we differed on this a little bit in the E3 walk up. I felt like this year Microsoft primarily needed to talk about games because the hardware stuff and even the service stuff is kind of a given. Like, there have been people who have commented like, well, they didn't show enough about Xbox One Scarlett. I'm like, it's number one, it's a PC, and we know it's AMD, so there's tons of AMD information out. Phil Spencer doesn't need to prove to me that he's going to sell me a powerful box in 2020. I know that that's the Microsoft mantra. They bring the highest powered PC in an Xbox chassis that they can. I don't really need them to prove that to me. And Project xCloud, I guess in my mind, it's we know it's play anywhere because they've been beating that drum the whole time, and we know it's going to allow you to play all of the games in your Xbox library. It drops in October, a month before Stadia, so I guess I'm thinking about it like, well, there's going to come a day they're going to drop a Project xCloud stinking app on my blasted box without telling me. I know that's going to happen. And you're going to turn it on, and it's going to be there, and you're going to start it, and it's going to say, pull up an app on whatever and connect the two things, and then voila, I'm going to be able to play. So I definitely see your perspective. I guess my perspective was like, I didn't really like, I don't just make it happen. Like, just tell me when it's ready. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting dynamic. Anybody else with comments to weigh in? Swiss?
I agreed with you when I was watching it. It felt very much like my mind immediately jumped to the PS4 Wired article, just given the way that they were describing Scarlett. It was very just, hey, we can do super fast load times, and like that was like the whole point of the Wired article. With regards to xCloud, I'm not as worried that it wasn't there because I think they mentioned like the hybrid cloud is their thing, and if it is going to be their take on it as a foil to Stadia, then xCloud is going to be probably pretty much entwined with Scarlett. So I would expect them probably to be more of a unified announcement or product setup alignment.
Prime, I know you got something to say.
Well, I mean, you pretty much said it already. I mean, I hate the when they do the tech spec stuff like that, like the PS5 article and now this, like, hey, here's the developers. And I know you like that kind of stuff, but I mean, I just don't like it. It doesn't do anything for me. Like, okay, it has 90 million teraflops and an SSD. I mean, I know what that stuff is and I understand it. It's just I think they shot themselves in the foot by even mentioning it last year. Maybe they could have done that little tease this year, and then obviously they could have gone deeper into it next year, obviously, because it's gonna come out in holiday 2020. But I think they just did it too early last year by even mentioning it last year, even that brief little tease that they did. And it's just I just want give me everything all at once. Don't piecemeal all this stuff and try to wow me with specs. This is not the 8-bit to 16-bit generation. This is totally different. I don't need to know all that. People know that now. I think the majority of gamers are going to understand all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I think it was just kind of I just didn't like it. I'm just gonna say that just to be nice. But as far as xCloud, just like DB said, it's kind of surprising they didn't go a little bit more into it. And I know they mentioned with when you turn your Xbox One into this server, there's no additional charge for that. But what about the Xbox? What about xCloud itself? I mean, is there a charge? Obviously, there's going to be charge. Probably, I would think. Is that going to roll into Ultimate? Pass thing? Is that going to be something separate? How's this going to work out? So I was a little disappointed that they didn't mention anything more about xCloud.
Yeah, there's definitely bits and pieces missing. I mean, I don't want to. Again, I'm living inside the bubble of being an Xbox One owner, right? So that's why I have that perspective of just push the app to my box and then just tell me when to turn it on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the question is I mean, what's the expectation? I mean, I hold that strategically. There are different feelings about the Scarlet announcement. I hold strategically that I don't think Satya Nadella has in Phil Spencer's performance review any objective for units sold of Xbox One Scarlet. I think Satya Nadella has said, get that Project xCloud stuff going and let me be able to talk about concurrent users or subscribers to that service, because he doesn't care about hardware. So it's going to be a new world, but what it leaves open for me when I say that is this question of, is Project xCloud a service that people can just sign up for? And with owning no Xbox hardware, am I able to just bundle that with my Office 365 subscription and then play it on whatever hardware I want to? So you guys are absolutely right. That piece is missing. To do our own sizzle reel, let's go ahead. I'm going to close out the show with additional things that were announced at Inside Xbox. This is the last gasp of backwards compatibility. And so that backwards compatibility team is being converted over to working backwards compatibility for Xbox One Scarlet, so they can finish up making sure that everything on launch day, theoretically, that's an Xbox One title, as well as the remaining back catalog of 360 and OG Xbox games runs on Scarlet, as DBQ mentioned. So that makes their launch lineup thousands of titles, literally, for Xbox One Scarlet. The big thing here is that the last gasp of backwards compatibility includes all of the previous Splinter Cell titles. So for those who were disappointed by Ubisoft not mentioning a new Sam Fisher game, you at least can go to your Xbox and play all the ones that came before. It also includes Unreal Championship 2, which I thought was pretty interesting. And that's it for as far as the things that stuck out to me. Some of those titles also get previously released original Xbox DLC. So if they had DLC that was originally made for the Xbox, then some of those are provisioned as well as being backwards compatible. There's a very weird gamer tag update that is rolling out, so that now you will get like a 4-digit suffix on any gamer tag if you want to change it. So if you want my gamer tag, you can take that, and then they will automatically append a 1, 2, 3, 4 to the end of it. This converts the syntax over to being a lot like a Discord username, which, again, if you want to be Zeusadamus 1, 2, 3, 4, then I guess you can. I don't know who would want to do that. I don't really understand it, but that's there. The first change is free, and then any subsequent change after that is a charge of $9.99. New games were announced at Inside Xbox. Code Vein from Bandai Namco, which drops on September 27th, 2019. Which is it's kind of a JRPG from a stylistic perspective, and a Journey to the Savage Planet, which drops early 2020, which is a bit of a shooter action survival planet game. It reminds me a little bit of I want to say Outland, but I don't know if that's the name, or Outland. Yeah, I'm not. It's an older game that was kind of like planetary survival. that is also coming. One of the things we didn't talk about is Crossfire X, which I guess to me seems like Rainbow Six for Asia. It's apparently a title that's been out there for a decade and has a ton of content involved with it. Highly tactical, highly accurate in its representation of weapons. That studio has been apparently worked with a lot of effort to get them to make that game available to Xbox. It is the first instance of that game being brought over into the West. And then we got more information about Halo Infinite.
Real quick, can I just say I'd never heard of that game before, that Crossfire X?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was such a big thing. I was like, okay, I never heard of this. So
Right. Well, it's apparently a big thing in like Korea and other countries in Asia, but not over here.
I heard about it. I mean, I don't. I just thought it was weird. Everybody was making a big deal, and I was like, I don't know what this is. So
right. And then more information about Halo Infinite, which was also demoed at the E3 press conference. One of the things that I thought was very interesting is the creative director at 343 Studios for the Halo franchise, Chris Lee. Specific verbiage that he used was, "We are shipping on all platforms in the Xbox One family." And what that tells me, I think that's a telegraph on what we can expect Scarlet to be called. It is just another SKU tacked on to the end of the Xbox One product line. It would not surprise me if they just stick with Scarlet, since they stuck with Scorpio for the One X in a lot of ways. This could be an Xbox One different letter at the end, or it could just be Xbox One Scarlet. They also mentioned that they are launching on PC day and date, so there's no staggered release. Prime, you wanted to mention something about Halo Infinite?
I did, and I forgot what I wanted to mention. So I don't. It's Halo, so I'm excited for it.
Yeah. So the only thing I mean, we saw a lot of footage on the first day. I wasn't very impressed by the footage. I was like, really, this is Scarlet running this thing? I don't know that it's Scarlet. Who knows what that hardware it was running on? But when I saw the footage the second day, I could see a little more of the details and the refined graphics on it in their new Slipstream engine. Still haven't seen any gameplay. We got some story reveals for the opening, but that is about it. Gentlemen, we have covered a lot of ground. We are roughly 49% complete in talking through all of our coverage. Anything else that we want to mention tonight before we close out?
I just want to mention real quick, going back to Stadia for a second, that we had learned about the, publishers' services that can be tacked onto that. And I don't know, that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, but I won't get too far into it right now since we're kind of pressed on time.
Yeah,
we'll definitely come back to that when we talk about Ubisoft, because I'll take the counterpoint to that, because I think it's a value add for Stadia if you are going down that path already.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be juggling some math between then and thinking about how much do I pay for Ubisoft titles in a year when I consider that I probably buy the game plus the season pass for that, and then multiply that at 15 times 12, and I gotta bounce that math and see if it makes sense. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining in on this episode. It was a barn burner of an episode. We covered a lot of ground. We spent a lot of time on Stadia, but that's because I feel like a lot of the internet and a lot of gaming podcasts have been getting it wrong. And I felt we needed to bring it into this crucible where we have domain expertise in economics, finance, project management, software engineering, and IT to have what in my mind is a more robust intellectual conversation about that service and what it can do and where it might fill in for a use case for potential customers. We will be back on Thursday night at roughly 8:30 p.m. Eastern to do part 2, where, as DBQ mentioned, we will cover things like Ubisoft, Bethesda, and the Nintendo press conferences. I am equally excited to go down those paths and have that robust discussion. With that, on behalf of the E2KG Network, DBQ Hams, Osiris Prime, and SwissGuard, that's going to do it for our coverage for part 1 of E3 2019. Come on back Thursday night. Please feel free to like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow us on SoundCloud. The audio versions are also will be up on Spotify and Pocket Casts, or wherever you favor getting your audio media from, for those of you who like the audio version instead of the video. That's going to do it for us. Thanks again. We're out.